Welcome to the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need for your cybersecurity career. Hi, my name is Shon Gerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide you the information you need to grow your cybersecurity knowledge while taking practical and actionable steps to protect your business from the evil hacker horde. All right, let's get going. Hey, all, Shon Gerber with Reduce Cyber Risk and the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast, episode 26, February 25th, 2019. We've got some great stuff going for you today in the great, wonderful Reduce Cyber Risk, and it's going to be about our cybersecurity news. I've picked out a few choice topics to talk about as they relate to cybersecurity and businesses and with the training aspects. You can get a lot of great information from the different malware, the different aspects that are affecting businesses from other podcasts. Well, this one I'm going to focus primarily on what are things that are detailing with a business and what a security officer within an organization may be worried about. It's kind of my view on it. And then along with that, we're going to have cybersecurity training. This time it's going to be around a business impact analysis, part 1. And these are really, really important as you're relating to trying to figure out a business continuity plan and a disaster recovery plan for your company. If you're studying for the CISSP, this is also a great piece of information you'll need for the CISSP test. And pretty much any other cybersecurity test that you got to take. They're pretty good. All right, let's roll on. All right, the first one in our cybersecurity news is around sensor panic. And yeah, that's not so good when you're panicking about sensors. In most places, people would go, why are you panicking about a sensor? Well, guess what? Let me tell you. Bottom line is, this is what it came down to, is in Singapore Airlines, a person was flying the Singapore Airlines flight and was looking at the multimedia display that you typically get in these airplanes. Well, the interesting part about it was this individual saw a circular indentation. And honestly, I'm half asleep when I get on an airplane and I don't pay a whole lot of attention. But I guess if you're bored on a long flight, you will look around. Well, this individual looked around and saw this indentation in the back seat, and basically in the screen that they were looking at. Well, they basically hit to the Twitterverse and said, hey, what's this? And that blew things up because privacy is a big deal now. It should have always been a big deal, but it's a big deal now. And what ended up happening is Singapore Airlines came back and said, oh, these are not the droids you're looking for. This is nothing. But actually, after a little while, they did come back and say, no, it was for future, air quotes, enhancements that will be set up in the ability for down the road. Well, to kind of a little bit on the background of that, and I don't blame them in this regard, is when you're building an airplane, airplanes cost gobs of money. And when you order lots of airplanes that cost gobs of money, you kind of want to pack them babies full of features, whether they're created or not right away or now. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Whether they're created at this point or whether they're available for the future, it's the future enhancements aspect. And so they created this with a camera that supposedly does not work, and it's not turned on, but it is there and it's stationary in the event that they decide to enhance that. Now, from what I read in the article was that it was designed for when they do facial recognition to allow you accessing to the multimedia capability, which is actually kind of scary because you now have all these people going into this looking for facial recognition software. And so where does that data go? And who gets copies of that? So yeah, it's kind of scary stuff. But anyway, that is what they were concerned about, was that. Well, this kind of falls in line with what's happening with Google, right? So Google comes into and says, well, hey, they failed to disclose the microphones are on some of their Google Assistants. Well, the part of it comes into is that it's the future enhancement. Now, this goes two ways. One is I understand completely. You got Alexa at home. I've got Alexa in my house. There's people have Google Assistants in their house. But bottom line is they have ways that they want the ability to have these things all interconnected. But in this case, it was a situation where they had a microphone that was never meant to be disclosed because they didn't think it would ever be, people would notice it, and it really wasn't functionality right now. So they decided to keep it a secret. well, they never intended it to be a secret, but they never really told you about it. I guess there was in the documentation around it, it came out that there was a speaker there. However, the question comes into is, so why didn't they not tell you? Now, I say all this just because privacy is such a big deal. And it's becoming a bigger deal because now we're finally realizing how invasive some of this technology is. I've also believed in this fact since the beginning I got into this space, is that if people are going to be listening to you, if you put a microphone in your room, they're going to be listening. At some point, somebody could be listening to what's going on. So if you have it in your bedroom, you may want to ask yourself, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Just depends, right? If nothing happens there, then you got nothing to worry about. But if you're plotting the end of the world, well, then maybe it would be bad to have a microphone in your room. Now, they say the Alexa is a big concern, but I will also challenge that thought process and say that all of us take our phones wherever we go. And in many cases, people are taking them with them to the bathrooms, right? To surf the web when they're doing their business. So guess what? Cameras are everywhere. Microphones are everywhere. So you have to decide, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And what part of that are you going to monitor and not worry about? Well, something else to consider is the fact that we like to think of, that power will be used for good and not evil. And when I come down to the United States, this is where I live, and being former military, I would say, well, you know what? The U.S. government's got my best interests at heart. Don't fool yourself. They don't. They have their own interests at heart. And this comes down to the fact of every country out there has got their own interest at heart. The purpose is to protect their citizens in most cases, and the other is to protect their own interests, and that's the other side of the house. So understand that if you are, all this data is getting sucked up by somebody somewhere, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in China, Venezuela may not have a whole lot right now, but they may in the future, France, you name it, all right? All these countries are out looking out for their own best interest. So privacy needs to be a concern. Well, recently there was a situation with the Facebook privacy issues, which we're all well aware of. The Russian hacking, which we're all well aware of. And the Chinese espionage as well, version 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, all of these things are well known, and guess what? The Russians did try to hack probably the election. And they've probably tried to hack multiple elections since the beginning that they've been able to hack, right? It wasn't just a new occurrence. They're trying to take advantage of whatever they can. Same with the Chinese, same with the U.S. government. They all are trying to take advantage of whatever they can around the globe. But we have to be concerned about privacy. So therefore, you need to understand as you're going into all of this stuff, whether you're dealing with Facebook, whether you're dealing with your phone, whether you're dealing with the Google Assistant, Alexa, you name it, everywhere there are microphones now. And now that we get into 5G, and once 5G is in place, there's going to be a sensor on every tower everywhere. These are all basically millimeter wave antennas, and they're designed to have very short distances to give you high bandwidth capabilities. So outside of the environmental effects that may cause you, so put that aside, the bottom line is that there's going to be cameras and microphones everywhere watching everything you do. Just like right now, as I'm recording this podcast, there's a camera looking at me straight in the eye. You just never know. So again, everyone is watching, everyone is listening, but you need to keep that in the back of your mind and always be cognizant of it. In the next news, we have a malware campaign targeting job seekers. This is primo awesome. Okay, I say that not from a standpoint of it, people are getting targeted in the fact that if you are a social engineering person that thinks like a bad guy and maybe potentially is a bad guy or gal, this is a great way for you to target people. Now, if you are a cybersecurity professional and you are trying to protect your individuals, this is a great opportunity for you to talk to your people about what they need to put on LinkedIn. Now, I'm on LinkedIn. That's not bad, right? If you check me out, Shon Gerber, S-H-O-N with a weird first spelling, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Now, the question comes around that, though, is if you reach out saying, hey, I'm interested in getting partnered with you, and I don't know you from Adam, probably highly likely that I will reject that conversation. Why? Because odds are high you're probably trying to scam me or you're a vendor trying to sell me something. Now, that's bad. Vendors are good. You got to have them. However, just saying the fact that you got to be very wary of who you're soliciting information for you. In this case here, they're using LinkedIn as a direct messaging tool to contact individuals directly, right? And what they're doing is they're building a rapport with the individual with the goal that they will then target that individual trying to hack into their information. Now, they have follow-ups, they have fake websites, they have emails, you name it. All of this stuff is in place. I'm going to go back to the the roll back time back machine. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but somewhere right around there. See, my third grade education is coming out. And in a previous life, my name was Jessica. Yes, and I use a lot of social media platforms to take advantage of airmen. Not in that kind of way, but in a way that I would try social engineering. And then I would get them to disclose all kinds of interesting things. The point of that was that it's a topic that has been around forever. And the interesting part around Facebook and all these social medias, I'm not targeting one of these as bad or good. You have to be buyer beware. You have to be aware that there are people on the internet that may not be who exactly they say they are. Online dating sites, right? You see this picture is a commercial where the guy that is a picture does not look like the person that that young lady is sitting with. That's a perfect example of that. So you got to be very careful. If you are using LinkedIn and you're looking for jobs, guess what? You're hungry. You're looking for opportunities. So if you're looking for opportunities, what's going to happen is that you're going to be more susceptible potentially for a social engineering phish. So again, you need to think about that and teach your employees what to look out for. Again, if they're going to have their stuff out there, you need to tell them to be careful of who's soliciting information on them and that they need to do their research if there's somebody that asks for a job. All right. So LinkedIn profiles, you need to provide the information basically what ended up happening was they would send a malicious, on a different topic, they would send a malicious email with a malware payload. So this payload would be set up so that what ended up happening is they would go and they would target them. They would click on the link, a payload would drop, and then they would end up owning that machine. Again, these are very sophisticated. Well, the original ones weren't so super sophisticated other than the fact that they had lots of information on the individual, so they could make the spear phishing attempt much more palatable and look much better. But the bottom line is that that's what LinkedIn was about. Now, they've been moving beyond that, though, from a basic phishing to a more sophisticated remote access tool, which is commonly called a rat. And these rats are allowing people to, once you click on the link, payload is installed, and therefore now they own the machine that you're working on. This is, again, targeting 101. Social engineering, I like to call it psychological operations, what the military does, is you get your people to think what may or may not actually be true. So, again, moving beyond the basic phishing to a more sophisticated remote access tool. As a cybersecurity professional, make sure, again, that you teach your employees and you teach the people that work with you what to look out for these type of scams. All right, the next topic. UK officials are worried about Huawei's presence. All right, so if you're not familiar with Huawei and what's going on with them, they're a Chinese company, and they have been in the news lately for having some espionage aspects around their company. I can't say whether it's right or wrong, don't know the intelligence. All I know is that the U.S. government has banned Huawei products from within the U.S. ecosystem, per se. They also have a situation out for the Chinese company around stolen IP that was stolen from T-Mobile. So those are some key things that the U.S. government's not real keen on Huawei. Now, they are a Chinese company that has, and I don't know, I'm definitely not, I have Chinese children, but I am not Chinese by any stretch of the imagination. And so one thing I do know is that the Chinese government typically will like to partner with companies within China. And if you are a Chinese-run company, then that's even better for them. And they all work together. They work for the betterment of the party, of the society. So a company that is in Huawei, a company called Huawei, or I think I'm probably just totally butchering that name, has the ability to partner with the Chinese government. Well, the allegations are that they are basically eavesdropping for the Chinese government. I can't answer, like I said, I can't answer whether that's right or wrong, don't know. But bottom line is the UK is struggling with a decision around what they're going to do. There's a new 5G rollout that they're planning on doing within the United Kingdom. And so therefore, a lot of the receivers are coming from Huawei. Why? They're coming from that company. And the challenge is that do they implement those within their organization? And like I said, 5G, it's a sensor basically on every street corner. If that's the case, they now have basically put sensors everywhere. And if there's a feed going back to the Chinese government, you now have put sensors all over your country feeding for the Chinese government. What a great way to get intelligence if you are a warring country wanting to take over global domination. Not saying that they're doing that, not saying it at all, but hey, if you got sensors in somebody else's country and you get a feed from it, it's pretty amazing. So that's one of the things that the UK government is trying to understand is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it comes for the United Kingdom. But I know from the U.S. government, it has kind of not worked out so well for Huawei. However, I will say this. The Chinese government probably isn't losing a whole lot of sleep over it, because one of the big areas of big pushes that we're seeing, I mean, I say me, that the Chinese government is moving into is the third and second world, which basically means some of the more little areas that have opportunities for improvement. Africa is got a lot of Chinese influence as well as other Asian countries. So guess what? China will just end up taking over the rest of the globe with all of their technology, while the U.S. says we will not do it. Not saying it's good, not saying that's bad. Coming from my former background, I'm all for the U.S. Go U.S., red, white, and blue. If you're not from the U.S., you may go whatever color your country's from. However, the key point of it is that's what the U.K. is worried about at this point. So if you're a cybersecurity professional, you may want to consider what you put within your organization. If you are dealing with stuff that is really pretty benign, maybe it's not a big deal. If you're dealing with stuff that is more along the lines of maybe high intellectual property and it's something that's concerns you, you may want to think twice about using that product. But I will also caution you the fact that most everything comes from all over the globe. It's sourced everywhere. So unless, as you're studying for your CISSP, unless you have a foundry and you are studying from your supply chain aspects and you control it from beginning to end, you're going to struggle with this spot because you got to ask the question is who else's code is in there. So just something to consider as you are trying to protect your organization and your company. All right, so here's some of the references. We've got Computer World. That's one of the part that I came back with Sensor Panic. Dark Reading, and then there it's about campaign targeting job seekers. And then SC Magazine is getting into basically security news and government. All these links will be on my website at Reduce Cyber Risk. And before we roll into the training, I just want to put a plug in there for Reduce Cyber Risk. Make sure you check it out. We got some great free stuff for you. Just got to sign up with me on my email list, and I have a gob of information that I'm going to be passing on to you as well. So check me out, Reduce Cyber Risk. You can also check me out on YouTube at Shon Gerber, S-H-O-N. Yes, I know it's unique. Gerber at like the baby food or toilet or knife or whatever you want to call it. So that is that. All right, moving on to our training. This is the CISSP supplement training that I put out there. Again, not just for security professionals. This is or for just security professionals. Business owners can take advantage of this training as well to help protect your business, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business and you can't afford a security professional. This is a great place to start. All right, business impact analysis part 1. Okay, in this training, we're going to be getting into a business impact analysis, or known as a BIA. This is part 1 of the 2-part series, and we're going to focus on this aspect, and this will fall into how you deal with business continuity planning, and it also rolls into kind of disaster recovery as well, but a business impact analysis as it relates to cyber operations. Now, we're first going to get into what is business continuity, and part of my CISSP training that is available, you will see the ability for you to get into some level of business continuity. And as you're trying to understand cybersecurity and the different ways that you can protect your business, you can protect your company, or you can learn the CISSP, there's some key things that you need to keep in mind. One of those is a business continuity plan, and you need to identify the need. And this is what it comes down to: is what are you going to need to do to keep your business operational in the event of a disaster or something else that may happen to it. So if you have a disaster that occurs, what are the processes that are going to need to be in place to ensure that it stays operational? Now, some people may go, you know what, if a tornado rolls through their town and takes out their business, their business continuity plan is they operate out of their house. It could be where, you know what, they just take a period of time and they're down and then they come back up. But there needs to be a plan of how you're going to maintain your operations. And these you need to consider this as what are you going to do if you're the cybersecurity professional or if you're a business owner, how are you going to handle that and what should you put in place from a plan standpoint? You also need to understand, is there any requirements from a regulatory need, or potentially even a business need, that you cannot have any data loss, or if the data loss that occurs during the incident is very small and is easy to manage. If that's the case, then that will help you with understanding your business continuity plan as well. So the amount of loss of data is a very key point. And then we talk about the amount of data, also the time in which it was lost. There'll be a couple points that we'll talk about with RTO and RPO, which is recovery time objective and recovery point objective. Each of those have a key play in how we understand business continuity planning. Also, that you deal with a fully auditable trail. So is it something that you need to audit? Now, is there some regulatory requirements that force you to do this? Or is it just the fact of good business sense you want to be able to audit this capability? So that's another part of looking at the need around business continuity. Geographic BC plans are based on external factors. You may have a situation where your business, say you're in an earthquake zone, and you need to have some level of understanding about what would happen and how would you deal with an earthquake if it was in your environment. Also, there are regulatory requirements that may force you to do this. It may be saying that the regulations say because you live on a fault line, you have to have a strong business continuity plan in place, because let's just say you're a financial institution, or you deal with regulatory requirements from an energy standpoint. Those are key aspects that you may have to work through. Another thing you need to think about from an external factors as you're building out your business continuity plan is bandwidth. Do you have solid bandwidth in your environment or in your location that in the event that your business goes away, can you get a circuit stood up so that you can go out and start working right away? Those are things that you may have to negotiate as you're going through your disaster recovery planning, but you need to understand, do you have the capability to even operate from home? One thing to consider is if, like in the case of a disaster, say you're in a town and an earthquake hits and it takes out half the town. Well, one, electricity is going to be a challenge. So if electricity is going to be a challenge, obviously your internet is going to be a challenge. Or if the earthquake takes it out and you have electricity, is there capability there the circuit isn't disrupted during that earthquake? So all of those pieces you need to consider as you're doing business continuity planning. So what's the purpose of a business continuity? Well, purpose of business continuity is it's the overarching plan around your execution of a business continuity plan. So you have business continuity, which is how you want to keep your business operational. Then you have to have a BCP, a business continuity plan in place. And it is a part of how you would do your disaster recovery, how you recover your organization in the event of a disaster. It also provides a cost-effective approach to operating. And how this does this is it basically allows you to, do you decide if you want to purchase equipment, have it ready to go, like in a hot spare, where it's already running, it's already operational, it's just actually waiting for somebody to go to it? Or do you just have a plan in place that goes, you know what, I'm going to buy this equipment off the shelf at the time of a disaster to operate, because I know what my tolerances are for my business. So it also helps you understand, what are your backup and recovery solutions? What do you have available? How do you want to manage these solutions? And then it assigns responsibility to the individual. So at the end of the day, you have all these great things in place, but if you don't have responsibility from the individual, who can do what, who has responsibility for what, it makes it very, very hard to have a good plan in place. It also allows you to set up a place or a way to educate your employees on what they need to do. What is their part in this whole aspect? Now, there's various standards that you can help you with this business continuity planning. There's FFIEC, which is a financial organization within the United States that's from the federal government. There's ISO and IEC 27031. Those are standards that are set up specifically around this aspect. And then the UK British standards 259999-1 2006. These are actually standards that are set up by organizations and by the government to set up a standard around business continuity and business management. And a lot of times they build these into the financial institutions just because the simple fact of the matter is
the people's money, and they want to have the ability for there needs to be a plan in place that if a disaster occurs and they have to do some level of business continuity planning or to maintain the business, that they've thought through these things and that there's been some level of due diligence around understanding what a business needs to do to make sure that they're operational in the event of a disaster. Now, when you're dealing with another part of this is analyzing. So as you're dealing with, we talked about the purpose. Now, one thing you're going to deal with as business continuity is you're going to analyze. And this is a complete analysis of the business impact. So as we talk with business, the business continuity is the beginning of the plan. Well, you'll be doing a business impact analysis of specific systems that you deem are of high risk. And you'll complete this analysis of the business impact of the affected unit or system. So if you have a system or a unit that is critical to your organization and you know that it needs to be addressed, what will happen is you'll complete a BIA, an analysis of that system to determine what is the overall impact to your business. It could be, let's say, an ERP system, which is your employee kind of records thing. It could be a financial software application that for your business has to be up and operational for this all to work. All of these things need to be in place. It also takes a risk-based approach to the specific problem. So rather than trying to fix everything and every potential issue you may have with every application or every system, it's a risk-based approach on these specific systems to help you determine, do I need to do it or do I not need to do it? As an example, let's just say you have a time card system. Well, that time card system may not be a critical system or application in the event of a disaster. It may be a situation where you go, you know what, I don't really care about that, so I'm not going to worry about it. You may do a BIA on it and say, you know what, it's the recovery time objectives and the recovery point objectives on that are so far out, it's not a big deal. So those are things you'll need to consider as you're doing a BIA. You also need to have key stakeholders involved. Who's going to be involved and who are the main people that will be involved with it? And this is how the BIA will help. It'll help determine who are the owners. Business aligned with a path forward. Is the business moving forward with a path that they understand what a business continuity plan is for? Do they understand how to deal with it? Those are all aspects of business continuity. And then funding necessary to complete and continue. Is the funding there necessary to complete this and move it forward? Do you have the money available? Are the people, key stakeholders involved? All of those pieces are key aspects around setting up your business continuity and analyzing what you need to do for it. Now, your next aspect is prioritizing. How are you going to prioritize all of this? Well, it comes back to the business with basically the highest need. Where's the highest need in your organization that needs to be addressed? So if you're a cybersecurity professional, you need to understand that not everything needs to be protected. So that you need to chat with the business, and this is where that relationship comes into play, where you visit with key stakeholders to understand what is their biggest need. You also may need to bring in contractors to support the implementation of any product or service you put in place. So you say something is extremely important. Let's just say, for example, it is your ERP or your HR system. So your HR system is critical. You need to have it in place. In the event of a disaster, I want it available because I'm an HR company and that's how I do business. Well, if you know that you have to have that and you know that you will need some level of continuity set up for it, whether it's documentation, whether it's the application, if you don't have the resources internally to do that, you may have to call a third party or a contractor to help you with that. So that's a contractor support. The service solutions that provide turnkey products, you may want to have a solution in place that is just turnkey. Right now, your HR system may be something that is a total pre-built application that you guys you developed in-house. It's all ready to go, or it's something that you just did on your own. However, in the event of a disaster, that application will not be available. You have no way of transferring it. So you may want a turnkey solution that is in place. The moment that something bad happens, you can just turn it on. That may be a bad example. I don't know. But bottom line is you need something to decide, do you want a predefined or pre-built application, or do you want something that you can just turn on? If it's pre-built or if it's an older application maybe that you customized, they may not work well with new operating systems. So it's something you may have to consider there. The other thing is on-premise versus off-premise solutions. Do you want it in a data center where you physically control it, or are you willing to let a software as a service SaaS solution be available for you? So those are different aspects you need to consider when it comes to prioritizing your overall plan. Testing, you need to look at tabletop testing. Now, there's small groups that are affected on specific aspects of the BCP. So now this is when we get into you're doing overall setting up the tests and how you're going to go down this path. You need to consider what are tabletop exercises. Now these might be 1, 2, 3 people that you're walking through, and it's focused specifically on aspects of the BCP, of your business continuity plan. There's medium-sized exercises, there's several departments or teams or disciplines on multiple BCP items. This is where you have a larger group, you're bringing them in. So instead of having one system, which would be a small tabletop, now you have multiple systems that are part of the overall business continuity plan that you may have to bring on. So instead of having just your HR system, you now have your payroll system. You also have your SharePoint systems that are set up where all your data is stored. All of these pieces may be in place, and you may have to turn all of those on. So now you have multiple systems involved, multiple key stakeholders. It's more of a medium-sized exercise. Then you have your complex exercises. These are all of the aspects of a medium, but now it's no notice or a full swap over. So like say, for instance, you're operating out of this HR system right now, but in the event that there's a disaster, you want to do some planning, you're going to maybe swap over every 6 months to this new system. I've seen that happen as well, where they will have the system in place, they utilize this one for 6 months, then they turn around and they flop it over and they utilize another system for 6 months. Those are the different testings that are available. And so you just need to ask yourself, is that where you're at? Now, to get to that point, you really got to have some good sensibility of what you're trying to accomplish because, and you've built up this. I would not go there from 0 to hero. Don't do it. You will not be well liked. You will probably be looking for a new job because it causes a lot of disruption, and you have to have some stakeholders involved in your decision making. Okay, as a summary of our business continuity, this includes recovery is what you need to consider is that it's a recovery, resumption, and maintenance of all the different aspects when you're considering a business continuity plan. It's not just the technology. So you may have the best technology in the world to allow you to have a plan. However, if it's not in place or if it's not a solution that is just focused on specifically on technology and not the processes behind it, you'll have issues. You'll struggle. It's also, is it at the enterprise or the individual? It really depends. So do you want to have a business continuity plan that's set up specifically on individual needs, or is it for your entire enterprise? The enterprise is really where you want to go long term, but that may be a bridge too far initially, and you may have to focus on just individual plans, your individual HR system versus the entire enterprise, or an individual application that is specific for a small group of people versus something that affects the entire enterprise. Regular updates must be incorporated as the business changes. So as your business changes, you need to go in and make modifications and changes to the business continuity plan. So it's a living document. It's not something that you just stick on a shelf and then you call it up when the time comes. You can do that for a short period of time after you've created it, but in reality, 6 months to a year, it'll get pretty stale pretty quick. So those are things you need to consider around your business continuity and business continuity planning. BC planning also includes ongoing or cyclical approaches with your business impact analysis, which we're going to talk about, your BIA, risk assessments, risk management, and risk monitoring / testing. So this is your business continuity overview. This kind of goes into where we want to come from a business continuity standpoint. Now we're going to roll into what is a business impact analysis.